What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. United and Bally were both manufacturers of bingo machines in the 1950s. And they were constantly trying to one-up each other. They had two brilliant engineers designing the circuitry to handle the complex calculations needed for these incredible machines. Linda Rott for United and Don Hooker at Bally. I'll be talking more about both of those individuals in later episodes, but one interesting thing to note is that neither really apparently copied each other's work. They were both confident in the way that they designed their circuits and preferred to keep it that way. I find that just absolutely fascinating. So, I'm no expert on United bingos. As I've said, I've never even seen one in person. I've certainly seen lots of photos of them. I've read Jeffrey's book. And I've read about them on Phil Hooper's website. But I have to say up front that the artwork on United's bingos is absolutely gorgeous in most instances. Some other differences that I note, aside from trying kind of unique playfield layouts, as they did in the early days with ABC and 345, United moved on from that roulette wheel style pretty quickly to a 25 hole, in the same way that Bally started out with that 25 hole layout. But United kept experimenting with post layout, and they did not use side rebound springs. This is pretty interesting to me because it would change the nature of play quite a bit. On a Bally bingo, which again are the only ones I've ever played, those side springs are kind of crucial. They're not incredibly tense where they will bounce the ball back into action unless you give a firm nudge. But the timing of the nudge is kind of critical with those. If you do nothing, oftentimes at the bottom, you'll get a rebound bounce into hole number 23 or 25, which you typically don't want. Normally, if I'm headed down to the bottom of the playfield, I almost always want the ball return. But United's layout is a bit different. So they have those short compressed springs, like Bally does at the very bottom, in a V shape. But their ball return appears to be unencumbered by springs, which means that you can't bounce away from the ball return and up into 24, which in practice with the Bally bingo does not happen pretty much ever. But the other interesting thing is that they use short posts, the same as they use to divide the numbers at the top and at each row, in between these short side springs. And those each have a rubber on them, just like they would up in the main play area of the play field. And this is where the play would become quite different. Aside from not having the long springs on the side, you have this extra bouncy rubber down at the bottom. Well, that would launch the ball in an interesting trajectory. And I'm specifically looking at United's Rio right now. And this is because on a United playfield, you had special holes that would spot particular numbers, at least in this early era. As the decade wore on, United changed to the more standardized Bally format for their playfield, including the long side springs. These special holes are in the space where the rollover would be on a Bally machine. Just, again, it would be an interesting new element of play compared to what I'm used to with a Bally bingo. So I'd be very interested to try one of these, especially these early United games. Other differences I see, the design of the holes, the trap holes that the ball falls into, are different with United. They're deeper. They appear similar to United's flipper games, where you have kind of a deep recess outlined with a red insert. In this case, I'm not sure if it's an insert or not. Honestly, it may just be painted, but it's beveled in a way that is different than the Bally trap holes. So, again, I'd be interested to see one of those in person. Now, where things start getting really interesting is in the insides. The insides of a United bingo differ pretty heavily from a Bally bingo. They're not completely different. They have circuits which do the same thing. And again, having not seen one in real life, I'm going based on photos and reading schematics, but the units that they have, instead of having these crazy large motors, they had circular motors similar to a Gottlieb score motor. This is kind of fascinating. It would reduce the weight considerably. You'd still be able to have multiple cams. You just have, either stack them vertically or make multiple circular motors, which they would do. And their trip bank looked more like a pinball trip bank than the Bally bingo. But the other interesting thing is that United basically was able to carry the same technology from the bingos to their flipper pin games, to their bowlers, and basically all the way down their game line. And I think that was pretty genius. Now, Bally, of course, did the same thing, but they were more selective about how and what technology they moved. Just pretty interesting when you're looking at it from that perspective. Now, in my schematics episode, I've mentioned that every manufacturer does things a bit differently on their schematics, and United and Bally are no exception, of course, when we're talking bingos. But United schematics are pretty easy to read. But United schematics are drawn in the same way that their flipper pin game schematics are made, and I happen to be familiar with those. So, looking at United schematics, the biggest difference is that their lamp circuits are drawn on the bottom of the schematic. On a Bally schematic, it's on the top. So if you're troubleshooting a lamp problem, you want to look on the top on a Bally and on the bottom on a United. But other than that, it is pretty straightforward. No real surprises or changes. The circuitry is slightly different, but it's also very similar. You have similar time tree, which is locked out via trough switches and a timer unit, and a search disk, of course. all the basics of a bingo are right here. But it's really the differences in gameplay which fascinate me. So, aside from having stuck with the convention of a knob on the front, which Bally experimented with in the early days, these differences in playfield design are really fascinating. So, that's all for now. Thank you again for joining me. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter, or on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.